We need to talk about something the industry keeps dancing around. AI is replacing software engineers. Not all of them, not overnight, but it's already happening. And the engineers who think it's safe because they're good at their jobs are the ones I'm most worried about. I've worked on AI projects for Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Meta. And what I've seen from the inside is not what most people are talking about on the internet. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what AI is actually replacing. AI isn't replacing software engineers. It's replacing specific work they do, basically the boilerplate, repetitive debugging, basic feature builds, anything with a predictable pattern. Here's the uncomfortable math. One engineer using AI well can now do what it used to take three engineers to do, right? Companies are acting on this. My observation, I've watched the same pattern hit the VFX before, software engineers or AI was coming into the picture. Tools automated repetitive work. Now, here's the inside joke in my field. Our job was to make our job obsolete. We basically did all these things, figure out what people in the field were doing manually and repetitively. So we made tools to do that. This is before the AI tools. Now AI just made this even more powerful and more efficient. Studios, however, didn't stop hiring creative people. They stopped hiring people doing the repetitive work because that was the bottleneck. That was slowing things down. It was also error prone because people didn't do it the same way. But now when we automated things, and now with AI, it took that out of the picture. And now you can just work on the more higher level things or the high impact things and hire the creative people in this capacity. Let's talk about the engineers who are already being replaced. The engineers most at risk aren't the ones with the least experience. They're the ones who entire value lives in the work AI just got good at automating and doing on its own that you're not really needed to do that or just to execute the task. So here are the four profiles quietly at risk. Task completers. All you pretty much do is just take a task and complete it. So now AI could just replace that. Basically, the framework specialist, the lone technician who can translate their work into a business value, the engineer who hasn't built anything outside their current job in years. I've watched good people lose their jobs, not because they weren't talented, but because their talent lived entirely in the part of the job that just got automated. And companies are trying to improve the process. If you are there to execute that task, they're not trying to necessarily keep you. They're trying to improve that task. And if something can replace you, then they will replace you. If all you're doing is if you're just a cog in the wheel, you want not to be greater than just a task completer or someone who just puts in a framework because now AI could just do all those things for you. So you have to find value where AI can't just come in and find a pattern and just put it in. So we talked about the four profiles that are at risk of being replaced. Now let's talk about what AI cannot replace. And this is where the value is. AI cannot basically replace owning a problem, understanding the business context, or take responsibility for an outcome. It cannot bridge the gap between technical solution and business decision. That requires a human who understands both sides. In fact, I actually wrote a book that you could see on Amazon if you're interested, and also an audiobook on Audible with this exact same problem that every company has this problem. The technical solution, basically the features that the technical solution provides, which AI could do, but bridging the gap and making and linking that to the benefits of the end user for the user experience and making the business decision. That's what AI cannot do. And I wrote a book on that. And also, this is where your value is, right? My personal story on every project, whether working on Apple Vision Pro or self-driving cars or creating an AI model for predicting the stock, making stock predictions over here, AI basically handle the computation. However, for every meaningful decision, that required someone who actually understood the domain, that's your superpower, understanding the domain deeply enough to know if the output actually solved the problem. And we could see this in live and in real life examples when, for example, ChatGPT first came out. Everyone thought it was great, but when it didn't know an answer, it started hallucinating. But if you don't know the domain, you don't know if they're right or wrong. That's why actually having domain knowledge really is important because they'll have an output, but you actually have to be able to assess and know your domain And that's where you become valuable to actually say, hey, this output actually solved the problem and how to use it properly. What you really need to understand and start looking at is AI as a multiplier. The engineers thriving right now picked AI up early and they use it to make themselves exponentially more valuable. Not more technical, but more productive on the work that matters. What this looks like in practice, so basically AI handles the low value work, right? So the engineer spends all their time on judgment calls, architecture decisions, and business problems, and making sure the solutions they're coming up with maps to a business value and actually has an impact on it. For me, I've seen AI and production pipelines turn hours into minutes, or even days into minutes, or down to even seconds. And I could say this because I still get contracted out with a lot of major companies that years ago, for me to actually solve this problem, I would actually have coded, design it, architected, build it out before. Now I already know the architectures because I've done it before. But instead of me physically doing it or hiring a team and guiding them for it, I could get it done literally in minutes because AI actually does all these other low level or low value work. When I say low value, they actually executed just doing the task with the tactics. I come up with the strategy, it comes with the tactics and it by actually executing it, right? But it didn't replace my domain knowledge. I knew the architectures before, I knew what it's supposed to do. It just basically it freed me to actually use it a lot more because I could come up like, hey, I need to build out this design. I just do it. Here's another way to start looking at this. The opportunity sitting inside this problem right now. So, like any disruptive industry, any disruption in any type of industry, the same shift threatening one type of engineering career is actually creating one of the biggest hiring opportunities the industry has ever produced. So 200K plus AI engineering roles are going to engineers from exactly where most people are watching this are currently right now. They are already right now are backend engineers, DevOps, system works, IT, things like that. But the difference is they're pointed out that they already know AI in their domain and know how to apply it. Everyone I know who's doing AI engineering right now and are getting the job opportunities didn't just wake up and just they were an AI engineer. That role didn't exist before. They came from an industry such as this already, just learned a couple of things 3 or 4 months once they saw the opportunity and added on to their own domain. And that's what made them valuable. You actually using your knowledge that you have right now. You just have to fill in the gaps to actually make yourself a lot more basically presentable or a lot more valuable, a lot more efficient to companies. And you could now with that powered, you're basically a whole army of engineers that before it would take a lot of them to do. You could actually solve that on your own. Not only that, you also have experience and you already know these domains. That's what makes you so valuable. Now, I do want to point out the anti-pattern moment right now. So after listening to this video, probably the most knee-jerk reaction is basically the response to this video, and I would say is the most dangerous, is to go out and learn more frameworks. That's the natural knee-jerk reaction. Go out, get more certs, get more certifications, do more tutorial, do a lot more leak code with it, not actually having any context around it. Because the thing is, the feeling of doing something without any result, that is going to actually discourage you from this. Now, the thing is, you want to do is not necessarily more. You probably heard the expression, work smarter, not harder, because you're not necessarily want to go and just learn a lot more things for the sake of learning it. It has to have a purpose, right? You want to reposition yourself, and the window to reposition is not permanently open. Now, what I've seen in every engineer that I've seen make this transition had one thing in common. They stopped waiting to feel ready and just make a decision. They just went out and did it. There are two plain rules. Never let the current salary convince you the ground isn't shifting under it. So yeah, things seem good now, but where you have to project what's going to be happening in the future with it. And you have to make sure you position yourself to be in the best position to actually be there when that transition happens, right? And actually benefit from that. And never underestimate what a focused 3 to 4 months of doing the right things can do to your position in this market. Here are the next steps. AI is replacing engineers who complete tasks. That's all they pretty much do. They just get a task and they do it. They live inside one tech stack because since their career, they've been doing this one thing, at least at that company, and it gets the job done. So if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? And never make their valuable visible beyond the ticket that they complete. So they're pretty much, you throw it over the fence, it gets done by some black box. Is everything inside there's like a black box, and then the results out there, and nobody knows how it works or how the sausage is made or anything like that, right? So you don't get any visibility and you don't get any thanks or any recognition for your work, right? AI is not replacing engineers who own problems, and people know, okay, if you want this problem solved, this is the person you go to, the owner of it, and they'll delegate how it's going to get solved, whether they do it themselves, whether they use resources or use a team or use AI. But the main thing is you want to be known as the go-to person to solve the problem. You want to be the person who know their domain. You're the domain expert, you know, the subject matter expert for that, like your SME. Go there, you're the person to go to solve the problem. And not only that, you also know how to use AI to multiply your output to make yourself a lot exponentially more efficient and solving a problem. The choice of which you want to be is still yours, but just understand right now the window is much, much wider than it will be 12 months from now. You see how fast AI is moving. Just even every week, there's something new. So if you want to take action, you have to do it now. And if you want the exact steps on what to make, the moves you need to make, the skills, the positioning, the path to 200K plus AI role, then check out the links in the description.